Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Damon Scott, Marketing Director here at PVBS, and I want to thank everyone for joining us on our introduction to Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors. Today, we're going to be providing an overview of the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors, a fully integrated business management solution. If you'd like to see more detail, obviously contact us. We can give you some more details. So today's agenda, our presentation is going to include a overview of the executive dashboard, the fully integrated web time and expense system, project setup, including billing setup and managing funding. We'll hopefully jump into some invoicing, invoice formats, as well as managing indirect rates. So a little housekeeping here. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we are going to post it to our PVBS YouTube account, PVBS Dynamics NAV, later today. If you have any questions, you can post them to the question section, and we will try to get to those as we go along. If we cannot get to your question, we will contact you separately. Also, later today, you should receive an email invitation to take a post-webinar survey. We would really appreciate your feedback, help us make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please take a few minutes to answer some questions for us. We really do appreciate that. So today's agenda includes a brief introduction about PVBS, and then we're going to jump right into the demonstration of the product. Again, we will try to make sure that you're done by 1 o'clock, so we're not going to waste too much time. If we're able to, again, we will answer questions as we go along. Otherwise, we'll try to save a little time at the end as well. So let's see. A little bit about PVBS. We are a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner serving only the government contracting market. And our headquarters are just outside Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia. It gives us a unique access and insight into the GovCon community. Also, as an experienced leader with over 14 years of success in the government contracting market and an intelligent innovator with Microsoft systems, PVBS is a great resource to both government contractors and the Microsoft community. Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors is a rich, robust accounting solution. It's compliant with federal rules and regulations, providing complete integration and ease of use. Also, PVBS is driven to develop excellence in providing the most comprehensive solution to our customers and our partnership channels. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our founding partners here and our VP of Sales and Marketing, Mr. Paul Skirpsey. Paul, I'll let you take it over from here, sir.
All right, thanks, Damon, and good afternoon to everybody. I'm going to actually go back one slide, not to take us back, but I want to touch on just one of the things that's on this slide, and that's about the type of companies that are using this application. Like Damon mentioned, all of our clients are government contractors, but government contractors definitely come in different shapes and sizes and the type of work they do for the federal government. So our clients are what we call for NAV small mid-market, and then for Dynamics AX, which is our enterprise solution, really the top tier government contractors. So when you think about the top 100, I think we've got about 4 or 5 of those companies, and that list is growing pretty quickly.
There's some in the pipeline.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, but today is going to be on NAV, and like I mentioned, for small mid-market companies, and really it's not just for services companies. So I know that there's companies on today's webinar that are from all over the country, and I know outside the D.C. area we get more product companies. But today's webinar is going to be on the services side of the application. But we just want to let you know that if you are reselling products to the federal government, we've got some great capabilities around the product resale and managing your contract catalogs. And for companies that are manufacturing goods for the government, there's a full manufacturing suite, including all the MRP and MPS capabilities. So for folks that haven't heard of Microsoft Dynamics, there's actually 4 products that are the back office side. So, accounting, finance, project accounting, time and expense. Dynamics NAV is the most widely used out of all 4, and these numbers have been changing so rapidly. It's you need a team to keep up with how many customers. So the last count that I heard is, it's up over 126,000, moving towards 130,000 by the end of the year. Customers using Microsoft Dynamics NAV, which makes it the most widely used accounting business software in the world, and that pace is growing, incredibly rapid. And then there's over 2 million licensed users. There's over 4,000 partners that work with Dynamics NAV, but what makes PVBS unique is that we focus only on that government contracting market. So this slide talks about some of the target industries, and what Microsoft does is all of their sales are through partners, and PVBS as a partner for the last almost 15 years now. We've been focused on the solutions that government contractors need to run their business. And there was a previous slide that said that the PVBS solutions are certified for Microsoft Dynamics. And what that means is that the things that we've done to improve the product, we actually submit them to Microsoft, they certify it, they give it their stamp of approval, and then we put it back into that base system. So you're covered, from making sure everything works together and really smooth capabilities the way that Microsoft expects. So in terms of a roadmap, this gives you two data points here. The one is the one all the way on the left, which is 1987. So that tells you when this application started. So it was originally developed in 1987. The evolution of it is amazing. And Microsoft has actually rewritten it a couple times. They're investing significant dollars because it is their leading product. And this kind of just gives you some ideas about what has happened over the last few versions. So everything from more data visualization to making sure that it works in Office 365 and on Azure, and then incorporating Power BI into that vision. And then with 2016, go to the next slide, with NAV 2016, they really stepped up some of those capabilities. And I think the two biggest things were one around Office 365 and that enhanced experience and how it leverages Power BI. And I'll talk in a couple seconds about what Power BI is. But the other thing is where it says Windows, and to me this is kind of like a little misnomer. It should really be operating systems because it works on a whole lot more than Windows, and that's the new Microsoft. It works on your desktop, obviously Windows desktop, but it works on the web client, which does not need to just be Internet Explorer. So I don't need to have software loaded on my machine to run this application. You can also download the tablet app, from Apple's store, from Google, and also Microsoft. And then finally, it's now working on phones. So everything from, the things that you expect, time and expense entry on a phone, to, I can get to any of the data or forms on a phone. So really making it where from anywhere with any device you can get to the application. And now just to go back to Office 365, the thing that I'll say is NAV 2017 just came out. We won't be presenting 2017 today, but I would say within the next 30 days we'll be presenting the NAV 2017 version. And in fact, our CTO who sits down for me, I'll have to go in and check. I'm hoping that it maybe even before the next 30 days, hopefully for the next webinar even maybe. But what happened in NAV 2017 is this Power BI story has changed. And now Power BI, it's not just that it works natively with Power BI. Power BI is now embedded inside of Microsoft Dynamics NAV, which means you can have a full dashboard solution built inside the application with security controlled from Dynamics NAV. So some exciting things going on. And without further ado, I guess let's get into the presentation. But I guess before we do, Damon's got one quick poll for you.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. While you're setting that up, I'm going to launch this question here. So I know we've talked about the NAV and AX and different Microsoft products. So just a curiosity question here, and you can select all that apply. But what Microsoft products are your company currently using and operating? Office 365 we touched on. Obviously Outlook, SharePoint, Excel is very common. And then there's obviously other ones too, like PowerPoint or Azure or Cloud. And looks like we're hitting it off on Office 365 and Outlook and Excel, really taking the lead. That's we're about 100% for all those, and that's with 70% voting, so that's pretty high.
Yeah, excellent. So it looks like Office 365, it's about 80% of the folks on the phone on Office 365, almost 70 on SharePoint. Pretty much everybody, they got 98% that are on Outlook and also Excel. So I'm not sure who the The person that's not using Outlook, or the couple people, but obviously there's a lot of folks that are leveraging Microsoft technology today. That's great.
Cool.
Thanks, Damon. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the presentation. And what I want to do is start out with a little general overview. So I'm going to show you some things, that work the same across the entire application, and just give you kind of like a 20,000-foot view of the solution. So I'm logged in as an accounting manager, and what you're seeing is my home page. And a couple things that are relevant to this concept is that with my role, there's two things that get defined. One is, what does the interface look like? So what forms do I have, that are on the home page that I have visibility of? And then there's also role-based security, which means I might see something, but when I can go in the record, can I actually change, or can I add? So read, write, modify, delete, execute permissions. The two of those together, they define what I can not only see, but what I can do. So as an accounting manager, I can see things like invoices that need to get created, expense reports to be processed, timesheet corrections to be reviewed. Each one, you see the number here, I can drill into it. So when I drill into the expense report, that shows me, in this case, there's one expense report that got submitted and approved, but accounting hasn't processed it yet. So it hasn't been transferred over to AP. I can pull up the expense report, by just double-clicking it. But even before I pull it up, in my ribbon, I can do several things with any of the expense reports I choose. So everything from seeing who approved it, so I click the approval button, it shows me that Joyce and Sam approved this and the times that they approved it. I can see any attachments, so those would be the receipts associated with it. And then finally, if I needed to print it, you can print these things, and you'll see at any time I can print documents, and not only print them to printers, but I can also send them off to other formats. So I can send it to an Excel document, PDF, or Word document. So as a user, the idea is have things at your fingertips, make it easy for people to perform their job. Other things that you see is I talked about dashboards, and these are some of the canned ones. So Microsoft's got some canned dashboards about customer data, vendor data, sales data, in this case, banking data. But with Power BI, now you can embed your own dashboards, and it's easy for an end user to build those dashboards themselves. And for folks that have used Power BI, as part of the Office 365 suite, you can build them there, and then there is the capability to, in essence, view that right through your Dynamics NAV homepage. Over to the right side, I call this the My section, and the idea is these are things that are specifically for me or were sent to me. So everything from my notifications, which would be it's like instant messaging. So if Damon wanted to send me a note about, hey, Paul, can you look at this particular project? We're not at the profitability level we were expecting. Can you tell me what's going on? So that note would get sent to me, and I could click on it and go to the record. My job queue, these are reports that I have planned to be processed. So in the system, there's probably 200 different out-of-the-box reports. I can process them at any time, but the queue is, these are ones that are scheduled. So if I wanted to run something right now, I would just pick the report. You can set different filters for the report. All reports, like I mentioned, print them, PDF, Word, Excel, and now you see that schedule option. So if I wanted to print preview it, I would just open it, click it in the preview mode, and now I see the details of this job revenue summary showing me information from, what contract, the job, the tasks, current period, year-to-date, inception date data, information about my funded backlog. So if I didn't want to run this report right now because I know accounting is closing the month, maybe I want to look at it tomorrow morning. What I can do is schedule that report, and that report, when it's scheduled, I still have the flexibility. I can tell it when to run it. So up top, it's telling me the time I want to have it processed. But in my report parameters, I'm telling it the format, and if it's printed, what printer. And then this is the thing that I think is pretty neat, which is recurrence of a report. So I can tell the system, run this report every Monday and have it on my inbox in an Excel format or PDF or print it. So it really makes it easier. It's not just self-service, and on demand, it's also scheduled reporting. The top right-hand corner, this is a section that allows you to set up your own list, so like a predefined list in this case of jobs. So in my demo system, I've got probably 70 different jobs that are set up, but for me, there's only certain ones that I go into every demo, so I just add those to my list. So I can add and remove from the list of jobs onto my personal list. And now once I launch one of those jobs, now I can see the details behind that job. So over to the left is everything related to setting it up. Over to the right is information about this record. And then, of course, you've got the ribbon up top. So some of the information on the right is the status box is details about this job. So I can quickly see the contract value, the funded value, revenue data, billings data. Each one of these measures, I can drill into it. So if I want to look at the AR balance and I want to drill into that number to see what makes up that 8,000, I would just select that number. It takes me into the list of all the open AR entries against job 1002. A couple things about these lists. If they're date specific, and in this case it's overdue, it highlights it red. So all of these AR entries are past due. If I needed to pull up the original source document, so this AR entry came from an invoice. So if I wanted to pull up the invoice, I would hit just my show posted documents, and now I can pull up the invoice if I needed to email it out back to the customer. Maybe they never received the invoice, that's why we didn't get paid. I can just say, hey, Damien, let me send it right out to you. Or maybe I'm going to print a hard copy and I'll also put that in the mail. In addition to viewing the source transaction, you can also view any related transactions. So in this case, a related transaction to the AR would be any type of credit or cash receipt against it. So if I drill into the remaining amount, it's going to show me all those applied entries. So in this case, there was a $1,000 application. If I want to know more about that application, I would just select that entry, and it can show me everything from what was the GL impact when that was posted. So it hit our bank subledger for this bank account and this GL account, also hit my AR, the customer subledger, and my AR account. So I can see the details behind that. I can also, in this case, go to the bank ledger. So if I drill into that, it shows me the detail of that bank ledger entry. The $1,000 got deposited into our B of A account. Open means we didn't reconcile it yet. So as a user, it's powerful to be able to start from this high-level view and drill into details as needed. So other things about the homepage, you see on my homepage I've got a list of forms that I go into on a regular basis. Each user can add and remove from that list. So I can add and remove any of the records in the system, move them up and down as needed, and I can also set filters on them. So if I go back to my list of jobs, so you see in my demo system, you've got all your different columns. I can sort it on each of these columns. I can also filter it by specific columns. So if I wanted to see all work being performed in Washington, we'll go ahead and filter to that list. And you can see that there's a lot of work we're doing here locally. If I wanted to save that filter, I can go ahead and say Save As, and we'll call this DC-projects. Click OK, and now over to the left, I've got this new list of projects, in this case called DC projects, which is just a subset of the master list. Let's go ahead and remove that for a second. Go ahead and remove that filter. If I wanted to take that list and turn it into a chart because I want to analyze all of our work, I just click my Show as Chart button, and now if I wanted to see anything from details about how much revenue have we recognized across all jobs, or in this case I'm looking at contract and funded value. So that's the measures that I'm analyzing. And then in the bottom section I'm deciding how do I want to group it. So right now I'm grouping it by type of project. You can see that most of our work in our demo system is cost plus fixed fee. But if I want to see it by type of client, I would just hit client type, and you can see that most of our work is federal government work. So it's just some quick analysis that I can do on projects. You can also save these as a view. And then I'll look at, some of these ones that are pre-saved that I had. So here's one that was showing, predefined, looking at my type of customer compared to the type of work, and how did that get grouped across those two segments. So those are just some basic things about the system. Works the same way, across any module. So we're just looking at jobs, but if I was in, my list of customers, you'd have the same idea, where I could chart things. In this case, looking at sales and profit. If I wanted to add another measure about, what's the balance due, I can do that, or I just have a list of customers. We'll just switch it back to a list view, and now I've got my customer list in here. So really flexible as a user to view things the way you'd like to see them. From the department list, you see all the modules built into it. So everything from financial management, which includes fixed assets, cash flow management, sales orders, purchase orders, project accounting is where we're going to spend our time today. And then HR and payroll is also integrated into it, or I should say built into it, but we also integrate with ADP, Paychex, payroll networks as a standard integration. And then there's other third-party payroll and HR products that we've worked with in the past. So this is the core financial system. The second place we're going to go into today is timesheets and expense reports. So this is the place that all of your employees are going to go to enter time, expenses, potentially purchase requisitions, and approval of those documents. So we'll go through and create each of those. And then the other thing that we'll touch on is different kinds of reports. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of different reports built into the system. There's also Power BI, which is the dashboard tool. And then one of the things that clients sometimes like to leverage is, how do I analyze data from other front ends? In this case, I'm looking at Excel. And what you can do is, the back end of the system is SQL Server, and you can connect to, in this case, SQL Server, what we call analysis services, which is a cube technology. And now it allows me to, build some dashboards, in this case in Excel. So I've got some standard ones that, we provide to our clients. So this is a general business overview, just showing you a trend of revenue, profit, and AR. A balance sheet with some key ratios over to the right, income statement, cash flow, a couple different indirect rate trend views. So this one's a monthly view, so it's showing me my elements of indirect costs, so my pool and base, where my rates are running, both actual and provisional. And then I've got a view that's showing me just current period and year to date, how my rates are running. There is also a set of operational views. So this operational set of views would be an income statement by job or by task, a burn rate report, labor analysis, cost analysis. So behind each of these, there's details that, in this case on the project spend, it's showing me my top line revenue, all of my operating expenses, including my indirects that have been allocated, net income or loss, then also what was spent. So you can see when I select one of these cells and you look in the formula bar, there is no data keyed in it, just looking at a cube called job and a measure called total spent, filtered by what we call slicers, so periods, jobs, and tasks. And then over to the right, it's showing me, how is that funding being spent from a trending perspective. So it's showing me that spend on a monthly basis. And then this little chart in the middle is a little predictive analytics. So it says, if we continue at that same pace, so it looks at the average burn rate, divides it by remaining, and it shows that we've got 9.5 months if we continue at that same pace of funding left. If I look at the cost detail, this just takes out the elements of the top and bottom line. Is just showing me my elements of cost. So it's showing me my direct labor, ODC, subcontractors, indirects, etc. And it's showing me that monthly trend. And I'll show you in a little bit this, see the plus sign, that's how I can expand that and look at the details behind it. And then my labor analysis is just showing me hours trended over months using the same slicer concept. So I want to show you a little bit on that plus sign and some of the drill down here, and I'll do that from a blank sheet. And what you see over to the right, this blank sheet, what I did is, I just connect to the cube, and then it dynamically creates a pivot table for me, and now I can analyze the different measures. So whether it's budget entries, my job ledger is my historical job data. So if I want to look at AR or billings, I just select the measure I want to analyze. So we'll choose billings as a measure. We'll choose hours. We'll choose labor spent. And then let's go down and we'll find a few other things. So we'll look at unposted hours, which are going to be your hours in your timesheet, unposted spent. And then in the rows would be how do I want to group it. So the grouping would be anything from group it by contract, group it by department. I could group it by the bill to customer. So if I just grab the measure and drop it in, now you see the details of what does our business look like based on our customers. If I wanted to grab another measure to make a hierarchy, in this case, let's grab our contract vehicles, and we'll put that above the customer. Now it's showing here's our contract vehicles, here's the customers below it. You can also add filters. So if I want to see this for a certain division, for a certain project manager or group of project managers, for certain types of clients, certain types of contracts, you would just select the measure, drop it in, and now I can filter it out. So if I want to look at just my T&M work, we'll type in T&M, and we'll go ahead and select that, say OK. And now here is a new view of that data. And then, like I mentioned, this plus sign means there's something under it that I can expand it. In this case, the plus sign is the projects being performed for that client on that contract vehicle. But you can also drill into it. So if I wanted to drill into the spent, just so you know, the term spent in the system is synonymous with a T&M. It's what is able to be billed. So the way to think about it is I've got 84,000 that's already been billed. I've got spent, which means this could be billed. So it's processed to the accounting system, and it could be billed. And then this unposted spent is timesheet data that it's in the timesheet that can be billed. So we've got this project for Department of State called Operation Morning Light. There's 122,000 that could be billed. And then if I want to see the details behind it, I can just drill into it. So if I want to see that 122, let's see it broken out by labor category. Now here's my breakout of those projected billings by labor category. If I want to actually see the people underneath those LCATs, we can go into what we call the resource, which is your people, and we'll drill in and we'll actually look at who are the people resource names of people working under that LCAT. So this is just a way to analyze things easily on the fly. All right, so that gives you a little bit of idea about some broad breadth capabilities. Now let's get into some more details on the project side and how these projects are set up and how we're going to capture those time and expense particular transactions. So let's go ahead and let's start with a cost plus project and talk a little bit about the setup here. So over to the right, we talked about the status box already. There's also a section, like we mentioned, for notes, and then I'll talk a little bit about the links idea. Over to the left, this is where I'm setting it up. So my internal job number, this is the client I'm doing the work for. So anytime you see this little caret down, it means I'm looking into a list. So I've got a list of all my customers, and I'm just picking from the list. You see the little funnel here, it means that I'm setting a filter. So I can filter on any of these records when I'm actually choosing the customer. When I choose it, it fills in the customer's details. If I wanted to put a specific contact from that customer, there's also a contact management system, so there's a way for me to identify all the contacts at that particular client and choose the contact that's, in this case, the functional contact typically. Who is our internal project manager, type of contract, POP, etc. On the posting tab, I've got information that's specific to this job from a financial point of view. So everything from what department owns it to some cost and revenue details, my job group and job account group. This is a setup regarding the type of expenses that are valid. So this is where I can tell the system that maybe no travel is allowed in this project, or maybe certain types of travel expenses. So you can choose the types of expenses and labor categories that are valid for that job. The revenue recognition and billing is where I'm defining for this job the default from a revenue and billing formula. The thing that's nice is that at the task level, all this can be overridden. So in this project, it's cost plus fixed fee, but if on certain tasks it was firm fixed price, at the task level I can override it. So for a cost plus fixed fee, one of the components that comes in play is this billing pool group. So this is related to your indirects and how those indirects get recovered. So you could have a corporate structure, in this case, you're recovering based on your provisional rate. So we'll just open this up and it says, setup equals my cost pool setup. So that means I'm recovering my indirects the same way that I'm allocating them. But you could have scenarios where it's different. And a great example is, sometimes you're not able to recover G&A on your travel on a particular job. So if that was negotiated, from a billing perspective, how you bill and recover indirects could be different than how you allocate those costs. So that gives you the ultimate flexibility there. This fee percent, this is the fee on dollars that you earn. So you can tell the system by type of direct expense, what is the fee earned, and then you can assign this to any job that uses that fee setup. Fee amount, this is fee on hours. So if you earn $3 fee on every hour worked, I would just identify that here. Then this is my withholding setup. So if there's withholding on the entire job or withholding on your fee, you can identify how that works. On the contract tab, this is information that's specific to the contract vehicle this work is being performed under. So my primary contract number, that's if you've got an IDIQ or BPA, some type of GWAC. So I'm assigning, I create that vehicle, everything from your internal program manager to the contracting office on the client side. If you're tracking IFF on it, I would identify that. If you have a catalog associated with it, so the catalog can either be your T&M price rates, so I can set up my future T&M price rates related to the schedule, or if it was product related, you could have an item catalog. And then when I assign it to the work, that's how earlier when we did that part of the demo where we were choosing the contract vehicle, this is how the system knew what that contract of work was being performed under. Then you've got contracting office and paying office. Below the main job is the work breakdown structure. And this is the section that when we talked about each individual task could be of a different type, this is where we're identifying my setup from there's really three key pieces to it. So the cost collection side, so I'm telling the system, these are the charge codes that I'm using to accumulate costs. From a funding perspective, you could fund at any level of the WBS. So in my example here, I'm funding at the charging level. So this labor for $11.5 million funded. However, if I had funding at the top level, that would allow me to use that for any charge code under this 001 series. The amount of funding and contract value, you can see there's a line underneath that number, so it means I can drill into it. So I can drill in and you see all the history of any mods to this particular contract. If I needed to add a new one, I just go down to the bottom and we can type in, mod number 49, and we'll put in a date for this. I can use my calendar, or maybe it happened on Tuesday. I just hit T. It puts, I guess that's Thursday. So we'll hit M. I forgot what Tuesday is. It'll put in the date there for me. And then I would just put in the change in the contract and funded value. So once I accept this change, what you're going to see is the overall job, and then that line will get updated there. So we say, okay, we just went over $25 million in funding. We go back to that WBS, and now you see that that just went to $11.7 million. So it's the charging level, it's the funding and contract value, how it maps to ACRNs and CLINs, and then it also controls everything from the timesheet point of view. So there's only one place that I'm going to administer the timesheet information. That's inside a NAV. So I'm telling the system, is this charge code available for time entry, expenses, and requisitions, maybe both or neither? And then membership tells the system who can see it. So the first thing about membership is when I assign somebody, it tells the system that they can see either the entire job or certain charge codes within the job. And then within the setup of a task, the period of that task tells the system how long they can see it for. So in this example, this is a task open for 4 years. This is the place that I mentioned if you had a different contract type for the individual task order, you could have that there. And then on this membership setup, you also have the ability to not only restrict it to certain tasks, but also certain periods of time. So the main job or that main task was open for 3 years, but Johnny can just see it for 15 days. So you can restrict it even further there. And then the approval hierarchies, unlimited levels of approval, but I can define them for time, expense, requisitions. They can be whatever the structure is you're looking for there. So that's some of the elements of the main setup. I won't go into the details about budgeting and forecasting, but this is the place that you can budget. A couple high-level things. One, you can have an unlimited number of budgets. When you budget the individual resources, you can define a 1-month budget for anybody. Then there's a copy function that allows you to copy any of the labor or ODC entries from 1 month out to either one or as many future months as you want. You can also have labor increase or ODC increase in the future if needed. And it uses what we call their working time calendar to identify how many hours they should have in the month. So if I budgeted Andrew, and let's say there's 170 hours in November, it would know that Andrew is 0.5 FTE. So, in my example, that would mean that December had 200 hours. So that working calendar is a way to help to automate that budget building process. You could also import, export from Excel. The last thing on this, and we're going to go over to a T&M job, is that the system has this ability to send out alerts. So these are automated email alerts. And at any level of WBS, you can send these off, and they can define either comparing billed or spent value to funded or budgeted value and send an alert at a certain percentage. And the nice thing is the billed value means you've posted the invoice, but the spent value means that you've used the funding. So I find out even before we generated the invoice that we've used up a certain portion of the funding, and it could send emails at either any of those percentages that you identify, and it'll send them off to a PM, a task manager, or you can just plug an email address in there. All right, so before I go to the next one, just to collect a little more information.
Yeah, we've been talking about, obviously, this accounting software, and we know everyone on the webinar obviously is using something somewhere, right. So we just want to figure out what exactly that you're using now. And as the tallies are coming in, we do know that a lot of folks on Deltek GCS are being moved and looking at other systems, and we're very happy that you guys are taking a look at our system. We know you'll be impressed with it. Some QuickBooks folks as well. And that's not too surprising.
We've got a few cost point users on the call also, and there's a few on other, and looks like none on ProCast today. But it looks like the majority, 70%, are on GCS or cost point, and we've got about 20% now on QuickBooks, and it looks like about 3 or 4 on others. So, all right, excellent. All right, thanks, Damon. So let's go to the next type of project, and then from there we're going to go over to time and expenses. So let's go to a T&M project, and if I can just find one. Okay, here's one here. So we'll open up a T&M project, and we're just going to talk a little bit about what are the things that are different. So on a T&M, we won't go through any of the main setups. Actually, one thing I should mention is I talked about this links, and I was going to go back to it, and I forgot. But the idea here is if you want to link documents to this record, you can just go in and create links to add, in essence, files, any type of file, and associate it with this record. For folks that have already invested in Microsoft and they have SharePoint, there's an even better capability. And what that does is that you can actually just take a document from your home page and drag and drop it in. So if I just take this document, drag and drop it in, it'll put it into SharePoint and link that record back. So great examples of where it's powerful is you get that funding mod from the government and you want to associate it here. Or I get an email from the CO that that funding mod was approved. Now I can get that source document and associate it with it. I can do it on any master record. And now when it comes to document collaboration, these documents are all in one place, and I can get to them, from the accounting system. I don't have to go to a shared drive or ask Damon, hey, can you send me the contract so I can look up what the T&M rates were? So really, when it comes to documents, Microsoft's got a pretty powerful engine there related to that. So on a T&M, we were talking about the contract and T&M rates, so let's go there. So here is that concept. If you had a contract vehicle that you're using the rates from there, so whether it's a GSA contract or, like we mentioned, any other type of GWAC you had, you can have those T&M rates set up in that contract vehicle and then bring those in. You can offer a discount or use a starting date. So say it was a 10-year GSA contract and you're in year 6. I don't want to bring it in from the beginning of time. I just want to bring it in from year 6 forward. So once I say I could schedule it or say okay, what it would do is it would bring in my pricing. So this now becomes pricing just for this job. So this is pricing for 2025. Like I mentioned, when you import it, you could define a discounted labor rate, but you could also do that right here. And the other thing you see is when I look at the labor rates, and I'm just going to highlight a couple lines, you see that there is multiple lines that say project management, and that's because it's got a different starting date. So the idea here is, today we're in 2016, we're billing this project management labor category at 162.86, but then starting next year it's going to be 167.34. This date can be any date because contracts get signed every day, and what's great about this is that this automatically updates the billing based on the date. So if somebody had a semi-monthly timesheet and that T&M rate change was on the 6th of the month, the first 5 days would be billed at one rate, and then 6 through 15 would be billed at that other rate. There's no manual intervention. If I brought these rates in and I needed to give a discount off maybe just one labor category, maybe just the project management labor category code, I just right-clicked, and now if I want to do it, I could do it right here. So you can do the math right in the cell. If I wanted to say that our PM labor rate, we're going to give them a 2% discount, and now I've got my T&M rate with that 2% discount. I could also send the data to Excel. So if I hit my Excel button or I hit Control-E, it sends that information off to Excel, and then I could actually do it here if I wanted to. So the idea here would be I would take my bill rates. I got a lot of years in here. Hold on one second. I won't be alive in 2085, so I guess it wouldn't matter for me, but maybe for Damon. So then I could actually do the math in here. So I could say that we're going to multiply that by the 0.98, and we'll go ahead and drag that down. And let me just go ahead and format this so it looks clean, and we'll just go ahead and make it to the nearest dollar. And then, actually, this one we already did, right? So we'll go ahead. Actually, I don't want to do that because. So then I can go ahead and we'll copy this. I would have just changed the formula and it would have changed everything. I don't want to do that. So we're just going to go ahead and we'll copy this down. So we're going to copy all these rates, and then we're going to go back into the accounting system. I'm going to take out the old ones. Go ahead and remove these. And now I can take these new ones and paste those in. So it's just a great way that, how it interacts with Excel. So we showed earlier how I can do that reporting directly from Excel. This allows me to send anything off to Excel that's in a list or ledger, and then there's that copy paste. And from what I've heard in NAV 2017, Microsoft even made it better. So I'm looking forward to working with that new version. So now I've got the T&M rates and the rate T&M bill amounts. And then the second thing is each employee has their own corporate labor category code, but they can also have a different project labor category code. So let's pull up both screens so we can kind of see them together. So the idea is we've got these project management bill rates, and we'll go back to current period. And now you can assign people to a labor category code, a project labor category code, so then the system knows that if Andrew is charging to 2025, then he's billing at this project management rate, which is over here today is at 159.60. So it automates that T&M billing from several perspectives. One is escalating rates. I can predefine their project labor category code and really makes it easier for people to manage those T&M projects and some of the complexity around them. All right, so that's a little bit about T&M work. We'll go ahead and we'll skip fixed price for today, but there's fixed price capabilities to plan the bill amounts that you're going to do every month. It can be either based on a milestone, or it could be just a flat amount each month. And then there's also an ETC worksheet, which allows you to do, if you do revenue recognition based on an ETC method for fixed price, it also helps you with that process. So now we've entered all the project setup pieces. Now let's talk about how we're going to actually record time and expenses. So now I'm an employee, and you remember we assign folks to projects. There's a whole PTO calculation engine, so people can look up their PTO balance. They can also request time off. So let's, for instance, say that I need to take tomorrow off. I'd go in and say, I need tomorrow off. And then the description would be the reason, and we'll just say I need to prepare for Thanksgiving. Got a lot of folks coming over. And then the job would be, what type of code it goes against. So as I type, it just filters it down for me. So I can either type or hit the drop-down box. I hit save, and now an email just gets sent to my approver to let them know I needed tomorrow off. Is tomorrow Friday?
Yeah, tomorrow's still Friday.
Tomorrow is Friday. Okay, so yeah, I need tomorrow off. And then if they approve it, it would just go on my timesheet. And then if they rejected it, they would need to send me a reason why they rejected it. Then, on a daily basis, a couple other things. We mentioned that you assign people to projects, and what that does is it restricts what they can see. So this user, you remember there was like 60 jobs in the demo system. Well, this user can only see about a dozen of them, but even that dozen sometimes is too much, and what they can do is they can set a list of favorites. So here is this user's 2 favorite projects. They're the ones they work on every week. So now what they're able to do is they can actually enter their time quickly by, every time I create a new timesheet, it just fills in the jobs that are my favorites. Then I go to the day that I worked, I enter my hours. If I need to put a comment in there, I can just hit enter comment, and then we just type that in here, hit OK, and save it. And that's what I would do on a daily basis. And you can see that it highlights it, typos and all, if you put a comment in there. My approver also sees the comments. Another thing to note is if there was a change to a previously saved cell, like I had planned to take Monday off, but really I only took a half a day. So we're going to go ahead and change that. And now it's saying what was the reason. And we'll say only took half day PTO. And then I'm putting the other 4 against this. So now it has that capability to make sure that as a user, if I make a change to a previously saved cell, that I've got to comment it. It also has the controls in place that if I try to enter time in advance, so in this case it's saying future time not allowed on this job because that's a direct project. But if I was working on an indirect, in this case my time off, I could put my 8 hours for time off, save that. It actually allows me to do that time off in the future. So the tools that you need to manage timesheets, all built in, all in one database, all integrated. For people that are entering expense reports, if you need to enter a new expense report, you can just run through the process. So let's just say I traveled last week. So we'll say from the 6th to the 11th, and we'll say I was prospecting in Alabama. Click Save, and now it creates my header for me. And then from here, I could either enter my expense lines or use the per diem wizard. So I would just choose where is it that I traveled to. Again, you can type, or I can hit the drop-down boxes. And then hit my next button. How long was I at that location? So just to make this a little quicker, I'll just say I was only at one location. Pick the job. I guess I don't have a sales job assigned to me, so I'll just pick one of these other projects. Pick the WBS code. And again, if you remembered earlier, there was a setup that told the system, should I see a code if it's time or expenses? That's why I only saw a couple codes for this job. Now I'd pick my lodging, pick my meals code. Shows me my grid, so if I got breakfast with lodging, I could uncheck that. And then I'd enter my actual room tax or actual room rate, enter my tax, click Finish. It also had the ability to manage unallowables if I had any. And you can see it has my first and last day at 75%, the middle days at the 100% rate. And then if I had receipts, I could attach the receipts, just drag and drop those in. If I had other expenses, I could just add new lines for things like mileage or airfare. Other thing to mention is if I did have, maybe this lodging here was paid for with the company card. If I went in, I could change that to company paid. Actually, go ahead and change both of these to company paid. And then what it's going to do is it's going to change what's due back to me. So we're going to still bill the customer for that, but you could see that my expense report was for $763, less company paid $510, due to me is $253. So then I would just go ahead and hit my save button, and finally hit the submit button, and then this whole approval process would start for the expense reports. So, we've taken that time and expense and processed it with expense reports. As they're being entered, they're just brought in real time. They're still, like we started out the demo, we were still validating them, but you see that the expense report is entered in for me. Once I submitted it, it sent the approval request. You can see today at 12:53 Eastern, it sent a request for Sam to approve my expense report. And then if there was attachments, I would see them right there. Related to labor gets processed through what we call the time journal. So we've got a missing time report, which is going to show if anybody didn't enter their time or it wasn't approved. You would process the time. So when I import it, it actually just imports it into it. It moves it from one table to another table. From there, I calculate the labor distribution, and that's going to calculate the per hour rate. The system handles effective rate and standard rate. It also, we talked about T&M bill rate changes. It also handles pay rate changes in the middle of a timesheet period. So in this case, Kevin, he got a pay raise, it looks like on the 7th of 2015. And if we wanted to see that, we can actually go right to Kevin's card by just hitting that up arrow. There's Kevin down here. Yep, there was his pay rate change on 1/7. But it's going to handle all that as part of the process. time journal summary, this would just be before I post it, what's going to happen to it. So just another example of a report that I can quickly analyze, also export. And then I would just send it off to payroll, or it's got an internal payroll. You could process the payroll here and then post it. So that's kind of takes us through the direct elements of cost. Let's spend a couple minutes on indirects, and then we'll close out with billing. So in regards to your cost pool setup, this is where my indirect rates are set up. It's as simple or as complex as your business, and there's 3 steps to set it up. So step 1 is I'm just defining what my rate structure is. So it's all done in one screen. So both my intermediate and service centers and final pools. The only requirement is the sequence needs to be defined in a way that if you have an intermediate or final pool, it needs to live above the other pools that use that. So in this case, my fringe, I calculated in step 1, and a portion gets allocated into overhead, and also my G&A and a portion to direct labor. So that's why fringe is in sequence 1. And then step 2 is for each of the pools, you tell the system, how do I calculate that rate? So what is my pool? What is my base? And behind these sets of accounts, that's just a range of GL accounts. And my base in this case was my direct labor with fringe applied. So that portion of fringe got moved into account that I picked up for this overhead client side account. And then what departments are included. So that's how the rate gets calculated. Then the allocation, this is when the costs are accumulated, what happens to it. If it's an intermediate pool, it goes into an account to be later picked up. If it's a final pool, it's going out to projects, both an actual rate and a provisional rate. So the actual rate is just the math of the accounts. The provisional, it takes the percentage times the base to come up with what the allocation is. And you can see that you can also, this is also date sensitive, so I could have the history of my provisional rates, history of my final rates. Just a little thing on billing is, when you have the final provisional or the final rate for indirects, the system will actually calculate your final invoice without having you needing to do anything offline. So it really helps to make that process easy. And then each month, what you do is you just run the process to allocate your indirects. So we just run this process telling the system what period do I run it for, am I using final rate or not, I could schedule it or run it. And then it posts to both the general ledger and the project ledger. And let me go to my chart of accounts, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay. So we'll go into our chart of accounts, and let's go down to our indirect rate range. Let's set a little filter. So 9610 forward is where my demo system. This is also, it's a 20-character alphanumeric field here. So what you see is the history of your rates. You can set filters on this, so I could look at it by business unit, by date, by department, by job. So if I want to look at just one job, I could look at all transactions for that one job, and then when I drill into this, it would show me the detail of how that transaction was processed. So what my rate is times the base, giving me the allocation by department, job, task, WBS, and what the amount is. And then, okay, Damon's giving me the sign that we're done. All right, so I want to just mention one thing on invoices, Damon. So, and I know I went a little long today. The last thing to mention on invoices is one, we can print these on government forms. So you can print on the DD-250, 1034, 1035. I can reprint them as many times as I want. I can email them, and I can print them in a lot of different formats. So we got flexible formatting. That's a lot of talking for 60 minutes.
It really is. Real quick, we got about 2 minutes left. I'm going to go put up the last survey here. We did talk about a lot of things. We're curious to know what you're looking for, your focus of improvement would be. Obviously, you're on this call for a reason. We certainly want to help out as much as we can. And, of course, my favorite one, all the above and then some, has been chosen right off the bat. So we still got some coming in. We have some questions too, Paul. Why don't you go ahead and get to those questions while we're doing the poll? I'll leave the poll up while you're going through the questions here.
Okay. All right.
We have about 1 more minute.
All right. So I'll cover the first couple questions that are on here, and actually one of them I see 3 times. So the first one is about cost, and it's saying, you know, what's the cost of the solution? And I'll answer that and answer one of the other ones on here at once, which is, you know, the cost is really, it's variable, and it's based on 2 things. One, the license model that you use, and the number of concurrent users. And what I mean by that is there's a license model where you can purchase it and you own it in essence and you pay annual maintenance, or there's a subscription model, which means you just pay, you know, a certain amount each month. And the range is pretty wide, so it's hard to, you know, tell you for sure unless I know your specifics to your company, so we can talk about that. But if you purchase it, the software can cost anywhere from, you know, on the low end, probably $35,000 up as a one-time purchase price. And if you're using the subscription or rental model, you know, it starts at probably a little over $1,000 a month. So that gives you an idea. And then our services, you know, are really dependent on your business. And then I've got, I guess, time for one last question, and this one is on here 3 times, so I'll cover this. And it says, is the system DCAA approved? I've got one that says DCAA accounting system adequacy. So the answer is the system meets all the requirements that the government places on accounting software. So the system doesn't, the government doesn't approve any application, they approve your use of it, because it's not just the system, it's also your processes. But we had a lunch event yesterday, and I mentioned this, which was we've got a 100% success rate. So our clients that have gone through DCAA audits, everyone has passed, and I think we've gone over 300 audits at this point. So we also have former DCAA auditors that are employees. So they put together a guide to help companies that if you've never been through an audit, you know, can help you out a little bit there.
Well, we have to say goodbye.
Okay.
But,
all right.
We really do appreciate everyone coming out today, and we do want to touch back, come back and talk to everyone when we get a chance. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us as well. But thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there, too.